In the very great majority, the European public accepts the principle of global warming. All the public opinion polls confirm this.
In most European countries, the majority of the population is convinced of the reality of climate change.
Climate skeptics, those who don't believe in global warming at all, are particularly rare.
Ça dépend lesquels. Après, je sais que dans le domaine scientifique, y en a qui contredisent et qui disent que le réchauffement climatique n'est qu'une invention faite pour faire peur aux gens.
Are there really a lot of these scientists who don't believe in global warming?
You have thousands of scientists all contributing together to try and understand what's happening, and the consensus across the scientific community, across thousands of scientists, is that the planet is warming.
Hans-Peter Peters is a researcher in scientific communication at the Research Center of Jülich in Germany. He's particularly interested in the relations between scientists and the public around the theme of climate change.
The scientists differ with the respect they see uncertainties in the models or in the theory of climate change. But this has nothing to do with that some deny the reality of climate change and others do not. I think there is really a consensus among the serious climate scientists that this is a reality.
If there is remaining doubt that endures among the public, it's because scientific information is not reaching or convincing everyone. This phenomenon can be analyzed from different angles. First of all, not all scientific themes tied to climate change necessarily interest the common mortal. The public prefers current, visual, easily understood events, and, if possible, ones that are spectacular.
Whoa! Oh, tidal wave.
When it comes to communication, the melting of the ice caps is the ideal subject. Such a problem, which can be shown in a few images, is no small thing, as hundreds of square kilometers of ice, thousands of years old, disappear every year. Another advantage in terms of communication, the melting of the ice fields is not happening in some hypothetical future, but today, right in front of our eyes. And to top it all, the phenomenon is extremely logical scientifically, because if the ice is melting, it's because it's warmer. Result? The public is unanimously convinced.
Et la fonte des glaces aussi sur la banquise, quand même assez inquiétant de voir que ça fond très vite là-haut.
The ice caps are melting. C'est préoccupant de voir que la banquise effectivement recule régulièrement et que les animaux sont laissés un petit peu désemparés par rapport à cette fonte de la banquise.
Biodiversity in general, and animals in particular, are at the origins of a quasi-automatic empathy on the part of the public, and so are indeed a very effective axis in terms of communication on climate change.
C'est sûr que des espèces qui étaient habituées à des eaux froides vont aller encore plus au nord.
Animals which survive in warmer waters will flourish.
Les zones de migration des poissons vont changer.
Ils doivent plus savoir où ils en sont, les pauvres.
Est-ce qu'ils pourront se reproduire dans les zones où ils allaient avant? Est-ce qu'ils pourront se nourrir dans les zones où on devrait aller?
But you have to admit that most of the subjects linked to global warming are far from attractive. As soon as it involves phenomena relating to the chemistry or physics of oceans, the public, as well as the media, have much more difficulty feeling concerned. All the more so, as science suffers right off the bat from a serious communications handicap, which is the esoteric and intellectual complexity of its results.
If we look at climate change, if you look at the number of different disciplines of science that come into climate change, it's enormous, and the complexities of feedback mechanisms and so on are incredibly complex.
In general, it is the esoteric character of much of the science that makes it difficult. And this esoteric character, that's knowledge that is far away from everyday knowledge, brings two problems with it. First problem is comprehensibility, and it's not only the language that may be specialized and jargon and so on, but it's also that you need a lot of pre-knowledge to understand the concepts.
In science, this complexity is omnipresent. It can hide behind any form of specialization, as is shown by the research Gregory Beaugrand has done on the relationships between cod and tiny shrimps. A few years ago, the scientists took an interest in the radical drop in cod stocks in the North Sea, which were first noticed in the 1980s. Initially, these drops were only attributed to overfishing.
Le changement climatique pourra avoir des conséquences aussi importantes que la surexploitation.
In fact, the cod had not simply disappeared, as it was rapidly noticed that their populations had instead migrated a few hundred kilometers north to the Norwegian Sea. Cod is, above all, a species characteristic of cold seas, and the waters of the North Sea have already started to warm up.
Une fluctuation de moins d'1 degré en température annuelle peut avoir de fortes conséquences et être responsable de fortes fluctuations d'abondance de la morue dans le secteur.
To confirm this phenomenon, Beaugrand studied populations of copepods of the genus Calanus, a kind of mini shrimp that forms the favorite prey of baby cod, which hatch in the spring and whose populations in the North Sea have been followed for several decades.
Pour Calanus marquitus, qui est la proie préférentielle des larves de morue, l'augmentation de 1 degré a fait basculer son abondance. On a assisté à une diminution de 80% de son abondance par rapport aux années 1960.
The Calanus copepods simply adapted to the warming by moving north, carrying the populations of cod in their wake. The story is great, but on paper, the scientific research is summarized by a succession of equations, tables and graphs that are obtusely esoteric.
On réalise des modèles mathématiques qui sont assez compliqués, mais une façon de vulgariser et de porter à connaissance au grand public, c'est tout simplement de montrer une cartographie de distribution spatiale d'une espèce et de voir comment cette distribution spatiale va changer au cours du temps. Et ça, le grand public le comprend très bien. Le plancton est enfin un intégrateur, un amplificateur.
Gregory regularly displays his results, as he has here at the Conference on Planktons of the World, organized at the Océanopolis Aquarium in Brest, in the west of France.
Donc vous imaginez, si on a une augmentation de 5 degrés dans l'autre sens, intuitivement, on peut penser que les systèmes biologiques... C'est vrai qu'il est parfois difficile pour les scientifiques de communiquer avec le grand public, et ça c'est un exercice pour lequel de nombreux scientifiques, on a du mal avec cet exercice-là. La courbe en noir vous montre...
This is normal, as scientific simplification will always be a difficult exercise.
La courbe en rouge vous montre...
If you make it too simple, then you are not treating the public with respect. You're treating that, you're saying they're not bright enough to understand this. If you make it too complicated, they get lost in the details. So you have to find a way of explaining things that are at the right level for your audience.
But understanding or taking an interest in scientific talks is but one facet of the issue, because the better part of the public, one has to admit, doesn't really care about understanding science.
For a long time, science communication thought it was all about public understanding of science. You saw this phrase, public understanding of science. The idea being people didn't like science because they didn't know enough about it. And if you gave them more knowledge, they'd love it. And it's simply not true.
In order to reach the greater majority of the public, you have to send them information that will concern them in their daily lives, that is at the heart of the socio-economic issues that are familiar to them.
You have to make results and processes of science relevant to the people, and that means you have to show them that it affects them or that they are involved in some respect in these things that the scientists study.
Though the causes or modalities of climate change might leave many among us indifferent, it is an entirely different story regarding the impacts that it will have on our daily lives.
Dans les prochaines décennies, le visage de la planète risque de complètement changer et ça va bouleverser les activités humaines.